Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today, the talk is serious, the kind that shakes not only the fans' emotions but also the direction of the entire NHL. It's September 2025, the offseason is still on fire, and behind-the-scenes rumors are getting more intense by the day. You know how it goes. Rumors, speculation, insiders dropping information that could completely change the fate of a franchise. And when those rumors involve league superstars, it's impossible not to stop and imagine scenarios, discuss possibilities, and even dream a little. And look, the Toronto Maple Leafs are right at the center of these conversations. On one side, one of the greatest players in hockey history, Sidney Crosby, whose future in Pittsburgh no longer seems guaranteed. On the other, an elite defenseman who has caught the attention of the entire league, Rasmus Andersson, currently with the Calgary Flames, but possibly packing his bags. Maybe for Vegas, maybe for Toronto. So today we're diving into two red-hot stories. First, the rumor of a possible Crosby trade to the Leafs. Then, the battle over defenseman Andersson with the Leafs and Golden Knights in a race. Imagine for a moment, Sidney Crosby, one of the biggest names in NHL history, wearing blue and white, skating on the ice at Scotiabank Arena alongside Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander. Sounds like a video game, right? Well, that possibility, as unlikely as it may seem, is being discussed. It all starts with the harsh reality of the Penguins. 3 straight seasons without making the playoffs. For a team used to fighting for titles, that weighs heavy. And it weighs even more on Crosby, who at 38 is still putting up incredible numbers. 3 consecutive seasons above 90 points, showing that he remains one of the most complete centers in the league. That frustration with results has led to speculation. First, Crosby admitted in an interview that he understands the trade rumors, attributing them to the hard part of losing. Then his agent, Pat Brisson, publicly admitted that a trade is a possibility, despite still playing at a high level opens that door, represents a because something might really be happening. On top of that, local Pittsburgh journalists like Josh Yohe have already written that a trade could make sense. This isn't just empty talk. There's a real cloud hanging over the Penguins' captain's future. Now, why does Toronto appear in this scenario? Simple, because the team is in win-now mode. The Leafs desperately want to turn their talented core into concrete championships. They've come close a few times, but always fell short. GM Brad Trailoving knows he needs a bold move to change that narrative. And what move could be bolder than bringing Sidney Crosby to form perhaps the most feared trio in the NHL? Of course, there are obstacles. The Colorado Avalanche looks like a natural destination, given Crosby's friendship and connection with Nathan MacKinnon. The Montreal Canadiens have always been his childhood dream team. And franchises like Vegas, always aggressive, have assets and cap space that could tempt the Penguins. But Toronto has its own unique card to play. It's a massive market, a historic franchise, and above all, a legitimate contender. And here's the fun part. How would Crosby fit with the Leafs? Today, Toronto already has Austin Matthews and John Tavares as elite centers. Adding Crosby will be almost a luxury, but a strategic one. Imagine 3 lines anchored by 3 of the best left-handed centers in the league. Matthews as the primary sniper, Crosby playing on the wing or splitting face-off duties, Nylander completing the trio with speed and creativity, Tavares sliding over to the wing, Crosby in the middle, with Marner on the side, a combination that brings together vision, technical skill, and physical presence. Even Matthew Knies, a promising young talent, could be molded into a modern version of Chris Kunitz, the perfect complementary piece to Crosby's experience. And on the power play, the possibilities are insane. Matthews in the right circle, Marner dishing passes, Crosby orchestrating behind the net or in the slot, and Nylander floating as a secondary threat. It would be almost impossible to cover all the options. Beyond that, Crosby is synonymous with leadership, discipline, and a winning mentality. Putting him in a locker room that often struggles with pressure and expectations would inject pure Stanley Cup experience into Toronto's veins. It's that old saying, sometimes just having a legend by your side completely changes a team's culture. But it's not all roses. Crosby's contract still carries significant money, and Toronto would need to get creative with salary retention. On top of that, the trade would require giving up high draft picks and likely a top prospect. And of course, there's a Tavares question. Would he be willing to change positions to accommodate Crosby? Would it cause ego issues or become a collective solution? Those questions linger, but they're good problems to have. Now let's step away from superstar forwards and look at the back end. Because if Crosby is a dream, Andersson is a practical need. Rasmus Andersson, 27, a Swedish defenseman, has been at the center of speculation for months. Calgary faces a dilemma. Extend him at all costs or trade him now to avoid losing value later. Vegas has already jumped into the race aggressively. According to insiders like Chris Johnston, talks between the Flames and Golden Knights are further along than many think. And let's be honest, Putting Andersson alongside Shea Theodore and Noah Hannafin would make an already championship-caliber defense even scarier. But the Leafs can't ignore this opportunity. The team has already shown defensive weakness in playoffs, and betting on Andersson could completely change the balance between offense and defense. In 2024-25, Andersson recorded 11 goals and 20 assists in 81 games, but the real standout was his defense. 196 block shots, along with solid presence against opponents' top lines. He's not just about stats. He's physical, smart, and has that lion-hearted mentality every coach wants on the ice in critical moments. For Toronto, though, bringing Andersson wouldn't be simple. Morgan Rielly's contract, a cornerstone of the current defense, complicates the math. To make room, they'd likely need to move Rielly, who, despite his no-move clause, might accept a trade to be closer to home and help mentor younger defensemen elsewhere. On top of that, Calgary would probably ask for a 2028 first-round pick and a high-level prospect like Ben Danford. It's a steep price, but that's the cost of competing at the top. Here's where the style comparison comes in. Andersson is physical, specializes in blocking shots, has above-average defensive reads, and can still contribute offensively. Rielly is more offensive-minded, mobile in the attack, but less consistent in coverage. It's almost a philosophical shift, giving up offensive upside to ensure defensive solidity. If Andersson goes to the Golden Knights, Toronto not only misses a chance to improve, but also watches a direct rival get stronger. Think about it. A defense with Theodore, Hannafin, Pietrangelo, and Andersson. It's tough to imagine anyone breaking through that wall easily. So what should Toronto do? On one side, the almost poetic dream of bringing Sidney Crosby, one of the greatest of all time, to join Matthews and Tavares. It would be a bold, risky move, but one that would put the Leafs directly into the championship conversation. On the other, the practical, urgent need to strengthen the defense with Rasmus Andersson, a less glamorous move, but perhaps an even more strategic one, to balance the roster and face giants like the Florida Panthers and Vegas Golden Knights head-to-head. What would you do if you were Brad Treliving? Risk it all for Crosby, despite the contractual and tactical challenges? Or sacrifice assets to bring in Andersson and lock down a solid defense for the years ahead? The fact is, Toronto is at a crucial point in its history. Between dream and reality, between glamour and necessity, between the chance to make history and the risk of yet another disappointment. And as always in hockey, only time will tell. So drop it in the comments, Crosby or Andersson, who should be wearing blue and white?